Chip Roy, Congressman from the 21st District. He is joining us here with Trey Ware and Sean Rima on KTSA. And, Congressman, great to have you back on the show this morning.
Appreciate it, Trey. Good to be on the show, as always.
What do you think about all the kookiness and craziness that we see going on right now? Not the separating the peaceful protesters away from the rioters, the looters, and now those who are attacking police officers and apparently made a run at the Alamo last night.
Well, and you and I have talked a little bit about this before. My concern is we've got the very people that are bemoaning the use of police force or extended authority to crack down on insurrection and violence, which of course our law enforcement officials have not only the power but the duty to do, to protect and keep the peace in order to protect property and protect life. But now the very people complaining about it are going to see, and they are seeing, more power being given to authorities to quell insurrection because again, it's their duty. And so they've got themselves in this circle. And, what they don't realize is, that is our stand, right? As law-abiding citizens, we cannot tolerate the kind of domestic violence and lawlessness that we're seeing right now, resulting in the deaths of police officers, resulting in the death and destruction of civilians. We had 4 police officers shot in St. Louis, 11 Secret Service agents that were, sent to the hospital. We had 2 officers shot and killed in Las Vegas. I've seen more reports overnight that I'm only getting my arms around right now. There was a man, a 77-year-old black man that was a former cop that was a security guard that was shot and just dying in the street over TVs.
That's right.
We do not tolerate this. Let me be perfectly clear. Anybody listening in San Antonio, if there's any debate about where I fall on this, we do not tolerate this. And the city council and the mayor need to continue to work to hold the line in San Antonio, in Austin, throughout Texas. We'll have the governors doing that. I think the president is right to be making points about what we need to do to keep the peace. We are 100% supportive of free speech and making sure that people can assemble peaceably, as the Constitution says specifically, peaceably assemble. But we are not going to allow riots to overtake our country.
What are your thoughts about, and then Sean will jump in here with a question too, what are your thoughts, Chip, about the media that we're hearing now who are being critical of the dispatch of National Guard troops who say, I cannot believe that we're putting troops on the streets now, Don Lemon on CNN talking about how this is a dictatorship now, we're living in a militarized United States and all of those things. That has to just drive you absolutely nuts. I know it does me.
Well, look, I know you as a conservative, I as a conservative, we love liberty. We don't want the militarization of anything in the United States, but that's not what this is. Let's take a step back. What are we talking about? We're talking about a constitution that guarantees a republic, and it guarantees our security, and that the president has the obligation to carry that out. The Insurrection Act gives powers to the president to be able to use the military in limited forms where necessary to keep the peace. But we've used it over our history on very limited bases. George H.W. Bush used it in 1992 in L.A. Lyndon Johnson used it in 68. We've seen it in other times. And what we're talking about right now, predominantly around the country, is the National Guard working in conjunction with state and local governments to keep the peace. The president did what is necessary in the federal city to try to figure out how to keep the peace in Washington, D.C. But now he's working with states. Look, Governor Abbott yesterday said, look, we don't need the federal government to engage. We've got it in Texas, and that's true. But New York is completely lawless right now. The governor and mayor are completely impotent there. So we've got to continue to do what I think is necessary to hold down domestic violence and stop insurrection.
Sir, just a couple of quick questions. I agree with everything you're saying. Watching the video from last night outside the Alamo, where the bottles are being thrown at the police, I think you're right in that they claim that they're fighting police brutality, but then they themselves, by their own actions, are putting the police in the position of having to do their duty and do their responsibility to protect that stuff. Do you think one of the reasons that this group, or whoever these folks are, Antifa or whoever they are trying to goad police and trying to goad, in a sense, the federal response to get military in the streets so that then they could say, look, we told you all along Trump was a fascist, and here he is rolling National Guard military through the streets of San Antonio? Do you think that that's one of the reasons that these folks are being encouraged to really kind of keep going after the cops and target the cops?
Well, I certainly think that must be part of it. And what is Antifa, right? Well, it is a loosely affiliated group of individuals that, share information. If you go follow it on social media and look at the chatter, there's been a lot of coordination and communication among a lot of different individuals. Whether or not Antifa is behind every aspect of this, certainly not. They're behind parts of it. There's coordinated efforts by lots of different entities trying to foment and use this as an opportunity for illegal activity, to foment rage, to create political unrest and upheaval. And so, yes, they would like to see all of this result in more and more chaos and disruption. Again, you cannot have liberty. You cannot have liberty without order. You can have order and not have liberty, and we as Americans aren't going to go down that road. And I wrote something quickly in a tweet yesterday saying something in that zip code, which is saying we are granting limited authority for the president and our leaders to use more force that we as Americans don't really want to do. We don't live in a police state. We never will. We don't want to. But when you have to step up and do things in the instant to respond, then it is appropriate because, again, you cannot have liberty without order. And we've got to make sure that we've got law and order. And my grandfather was the chief of police of a small West Texas town, Sweetwater.
That's right.
I worked in law enforcement and the U.S. Attorney's Office and as the first assistant attorney general. And the vast majority of our law enforcement community are great human beings. They're the people in our communities who want people to prosper and do well of all colors and races, backgrounds. And we should stand with them, stand alongside them, hold them accountable, just like we hold everybody else accountable, doctors or nurses or anybody who break the law. But we've got to stand alongside law enforcement because we've got to preserve the peace.
My dad spent a lot of time with Sheriff Roy in Sweetwater at the Roundup every year back in the late 1950s. So, yeah, it's a long time ago. But I can tell you this, Chip, and just last time you and I talked, you got a great thing done where you got businesses to have the leeway to do more with the funding that they got under the federal coronavirus bailout stuff, and it was great. It was a great move on your part. What would you say specifically to the mayor and those here in San Antonio concerning protection of the Alamo, defending the shrine of liberty and freedom for the state of Texas? After we saw what happened last night, it was, it's a move that woke up a lot of people this morning. I can tell you that. Your thoughts?
Well, I saw some criticisms of seeing a number of our National Guard and or military units, I don't know who it was exactly, standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. And it's obviously a jarring scene, right? You don't want to see that. But we have a duty to preserve and protect these things that are historic and important for the fabric of our culture and society. The Alamo is one of those. And the Alamo is such, it's not just a symbol, it's a part of who we are. We as Texans, we as Americans, right? The symbol of standing up against the tyranny of what we were dealing with Mexico. Come and take it, as is famously known, obviously, occurred at Gonzales, but before the Alamo, but then resulted in that great stand at the Alamo that's a part of who we are. And, I shall now never surrender or retreat. And I think we have to remember that and remember what's important to hold the line as Texans, to let people understand that we are a law and order community who believe in liberty. Those things go hand in hand, and we're not going to back down from it. And so it is really important that we hold that line there.
Sean and I congratulate you on your stance, Chip, and thank you for your time. We'll speak again very soon.
God bless y'all. Y'all take care.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good one. This is Congressman Chip Roy joining us.